Hi everyone, my name is Arani Hiritharan, and for my Talaria paper, I chose to discuss the current findings regarding neuroplasticity as a therapy for ADHD and a literature review, alongside the support of my amazing mentor, Lauren. So this is just a quick overview of what I plan on discussing today. I'll be starting off with my paper, talking about why I chose my paper, and then the topic that I did for my paper, and then just going over a pretty brief summary of the paper. Then I'll proceed to share my thoughts regarding my experience with my amazing mentor, which will be preceded by challenges I faced and how I overcame these challenges. I'll finally go over the takeaways that I have from the entire Talaria experience and conclude with the most important part of my talk, which are the next steps mentioned in my paper. I feel these are vital to cover as they revolve around what needs to be done in the future of neuroplasticity ADHD treatment work. All right, so let's get into it, starting with an intro plus quick summary about my paper. So for me, when I had originally applied for Talaria, I was extremely passionate about finding a neuroscience topic to help further develop my knowledge on neuroscience. However, when the time actually came to choose a topic, I realized I actually didn't know much about neuroscience, which I believe would prove as a disadvantage to me. Alas, I decided due to my extensive knowledge in psychology, it would be ideal to choose a topic in the realm of neuropsychology. I was particularly drawn to ADHD due to the large number of people present in my life who currently live with the condition. I had learned about neuroplasticity while searching for study tips and found it really fascinating that the brain could rewire itself at the core. I was curious to see if it was possible to utilize this to help treat those with ADHD. However, I quickly realized many others had already explored this path of thinking, and alas, there were a multitude of studies aimed at improving ADHD symptoms through computerized neuroplasticity training, with most varying in methodology. Alas, I decided to write a literature review discussing the key parameters and results of studies focused on utilizing neuroplasticity, particularly those based around computer training, to aid ADHD patients. I chose 10 study papers and one secondary analysis of previously published original studies to include in my literature review. The selection of theta beta neurofeedback cognitive training, which consisted of activate and on track programs, and then inhibitory control were examined concerning achieved brain regulation, changes in cognition, changes in symptom, or clinical outcomes. All right, so now onto my mentor. Look, I'll come back to the results part at the end. So for me, my mentor was absolutely amazing. I really appreciated how throughout the entire process, she was extremely supportive and encouraging of my ideas and thought process. She did her absolute best to ensure I understood the content and proceeded with the best approach possible, making it an incredible experience for me. In particular, I enjoyed that she provided constructive criticism, which allowed me to grow further and learn more about writing the paper and academic papers in general. It also allowed me to further investigate on my subject and regarding other topics in the neuroscience field that correlated with what I was researching. Regardless of the difficulties and challenges we faced, she continued to help me with the same level of diligence as she originally had. I felt that she truly helped make the process much more enjoyable, and alas, I'm extremely thankful to her. All right, so now on to some challenges I faced and how I overcame them. So for me, two of the main challenges I faced were situational and then lack of knowledge. So in regards to the situation, for me personally, I was actually abroad in a whole different country than I had thought I would be. And this meant that I had a different time zone. I was busier than I originally expected to be. I was abroad, so my mom would want me to go out and about, things like that. So this left me little time to complete my tasks to stay on schedule because, like I said, I would be out and about unexpectedly. I would be losing hours sleeping since we were in a different time zone. And sometimes I felt that I didn't have enough time to actually complete the tasks given to the level that I would have preferred them to be. I felt that even if I did get it done, it was not as good or high quality as I would have liked. And then in regards to the lack of knowledge, I was extremely anxious throughout about pulling off this entire academic paper because I felt that for one, this is my first time writing an academic paper, so I have no experience. I have no clue what I was doing, as I'm sure many of the rest of you felt the same. And then also because I am only a high school student, I just finished grade 10. So I felt that I didn't have enough knowledge because I hadn't done university courses the way most people would before writing an academic paper and things like that. So for me, I felt pretty unprepared at times, and I wasn't sure if I had done things the quote unquote right way. And honestly, even now, like looking back, I'm not 100% sure if, 4 to 5 years from now, looking back, I'll look at this paper and be like, oh, I did it perfectly well. Um, However, I think I was able to overcome these challenges to the maximum extent possible over the course of time. Which I feel for me truly started when I stopped being afraid and I actually started communicating with my mentor. I explained that I was lost when I was, instead of trying to just figure it out on my own, which allowed her to clearly communicate to me whatever I was lost about and explain things to me in a way that made much more sense than the internet did. I would also explain to her if I didn't have enough time and would ask for further time when it was needed. And then she would do her best to accommodate me and help me overcome the hurdle, which resulted in my success. I was able to successfully complete the paper on time and hand it in to a level where I'm satisfied with for now. All right, so takeaways. So throughout the entire Talaria process, there were a few takeaways I learned that I'd like to share with you all today. The first one, I did not create a slide for this because I felt that it would be better to have more of a casual conversation regarding this. So the first one for me was time management. I think even if I had been here in like my typical time zone, so EST, I still feel that due to how fast the Talaria program goes, I'm sure many of you experience this as well, you need to manage your time extremely well. And I think that was a really key takeaway for me because even though I had done the IB program and I had learned to manage my time in that, this was like a whole new experience. And I think it really did help me prepare for the actual start of like DP1 in regards to being able to write papers quickly, but also making sure that they are of good quality. Another thing for me, this is such a small random thing, but it was in terms of organizing citations. I had never worked with, I think I had 70 citations by the end of it. I've never worked with that many citations before. And so learning how to use a citation manager, learning how to clear properly, keep everything organized in that aspect to make sure that my final paper ended up being accurate was extremely important. I think those were two of the most interesting takeaways for me. I think those were things I wasn't expecting to come out of the Talaria with. Obviously, I also learned how to write a paper, but I think that was expected. So for next steps, so I'm just going to talk about more my paper and specifically what were some of the next steps that I had suggested. So I have 5 next steps I'd like to discuss with you all. So firstly, long-term effects, short-term designs. So essentially, more research needs to be conducted to ensure the long-term effects of neuroplasticity training areas are beneficial, if not more beneficial than medicine, like medication. So an economically advantageous method would be to use short-term assessments, such as like single study sessions, because this has been done in the past and it has been proven that you can see effects of neuroplasticity within just one session. So this allows us to conduct the research in a more economically feasible way. However, especially regarding theta beta treatment, one of the things I found while I was doing researching for my literature review was that currently we're unaware as to how clinically effective short-term designs will be in the long term. So how long the effects will last, essentially. So further research is required on that as well. Secondly, I believe that the right partial cortex and cerebellum need to be considered as target sites for clinical intervention, as there is evidence that this could be beneficial, especially for young children. So I believe that it also needs to be considered within the separation of children and adults. It's also vital that due to limitations in trials for all methodologies that I discussed, so this was TB neurofeedback, cognitive training, and inhibitory control, studies should be replicated and extended to larger samples to address the limitations and then also to extend and validate the current knowledge that we have. It's also important that to address bias and imprecision, it's important that lack of binding, incomplete outcome data, and selective outcome reporting are avoided. During these larger studies, it's important that differentiation by subtype, age, and other differentiations, such as ability to plan, should be noted and reported. This is especially important before dismissing Activate as a possible trial, as most of the studies currently done for this specific computerized training have been pretty small, so the results are most likely not accurate. And lastly, learning more about underlying mechanisms and testing potential optimization regarding the various methodologies is crucial as there are many underlying neurophysiological mechanisms that we still are unaware of and don't fully understand how they work. So there are many other next steps that were also discussed in my paper. However, these are five of the key ones that I like to point out to you all as they apply to all of the different methodologies that I had discussed. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you all enjoyed my presentation. And if you have any questions or just want to connect with me, feel free to do so through any of the sources listed on the screen above.